Welcome to the Creative Condition podcast with me, Ben Talon, illustrator and creativity coach, founder of the Creative Condition, artist and writer. I bring 20 years of creative industry experience and a lifelong love of creativity, a fundamental pillar of human happiness, to you through ongoing personal exploration and the shared experiences of others. You'll get a nourishing mix of creative industry professionals and people far and wide using creativity in ways that can take our learning to the next level so we can maximise our unique blend. The show has been supported from day one by Illustration X, a tremendous illustration agency representing a shining global roster of illustrators and animators over at illustrationx.com. The music for the show is by Dirty Freud, who you can listen to now on all good streaming services. And for everything else, for my coaching, resources and inspiration, head to thecreativecondition.com.
I think you're right. In moments of shifts, you're going to feel that pullback more than ever. You're going to have people who react very strongly to wanting to keep us the same. And I do feel that I don't think the word awakening is too strong. I think that artistry and creativity isn't being given enough attention as perhaps some of our other understanding of the human condition is. I think, and I say it all the time, I think creativity is a missing pillar in self-development. We're really interested in a lot of different ways that humans function and how it is we relate to each other. But I think a lot of the time we do forget the importance of art and creativity and play.
Today I'm joined by the fabulous Amie McNee, founder of Inspired to Write Collective, a champion of creativity and author of the brand new We Need Your Art, Stop Messing Around and Make Something. And that's exactly what we're going to get into today, the fundamental need for human beings to make and create the art they were born to make, why we don't do it, what gets in our way, how we can improve that, how we can take immediate steps to remedy it, why even the greatest artists get stuck, why it's all messed up in education, but why we need to be positive and create great art. This is the Creative Condition podcast. How are you doing, guys? I hope you're well. My name is Ben Talon. I am your host of the Creative Condition, founder of the Creative Condition as a broader project beyond just this little old podcast. I love it. I am a champion of creativity. I am an artist. I'm a writer. I am a coach. I am whatever I decide to be at any given moment, depending on my curiosity, and I am increasingly confident in that, and I want to share that with you through coaching, through this podcast, through reading lists, through the ongoing work that I've been doing for the last 15 years. I am hugely passionate. Welcome to the show. If you're new to the show, welcome. It's a joy to have you. If you're a regular, thank you very much. As you know, it means the world. Anything supporting my creativity is hugely cherished. It will always be so. It was a fundamental part of what I am. And that's exactly what we're getting into today. Amie McNee and I. If you're not familiar with Amie, she's an absolute joy. She's a force of nature. She founded Inspired to Write, a collective championing creativity and helping the artists make the art they were born to make, unpicking those knots we tie ourselves in as adults when we stop making with pure imagination in childhood. Often thanks to education, sometimes thanks to parents, and a whole other raft of reasons. But Amie is brilliant at articulating this stuff, as you would hope for a writer, but as I know, someone who's very good at articulating my arguments through the written word. It's not always easy to articulate that, but Amie is great at both of them, and that's why I wanted to talk to her on today's show. But without further ado, a thank you to the founding sponsor of this show, Illustration X. Go and take a look at their spellbinding array of global illustrators and animators and their portfolios in the news section of the site over at illustrationx.com. They've been a leading voice, along with the Society of Artists Agents, the Association of Illustrators, former sponsor of the show. Shout out to them, the AOI.com, for championing intellectual property rights in this recent rift with the UK government over artificial intelligence, something that just increasingly makes me uneasy, and I'm not scared of it, but I just find it really ugly and horrible and ubiquitous and antithetical to creativity. I know there's many facets to this. I know there are many uses for the likes of admin and assisting artists so that they can free up more time to create, and I'm more willing to listen to that. but I'm old school. I believe in the human brain, human perception, human instinct, and the way we feel about the world around us. That's what's informing creativity, not machines that can spit out something you might want to call art in a matter of seconds. But that's another conversation. Today I'm here to talk about humans and creativity and art, like I always am. So there you have it. Check them out, illustrationx.com. I'd also like you to consider supporting the Ukrainian Institute. Sadly, particularly pertinent this week, given the political state of affairs. Head over to ui.org.ua and you can see what the Ukrainian Institute do. They support an embattled Ukrainian creative community during this horrific time of war, and you can help them do that by sharing the work of their artists. You might even want to commission somebody, bring them in on a project. If you can do that, it might be life-changing. That's amazing. They need hope that comes from making art and creativity, and I hope you will consider at least taking a glance over at ui.org.ua and seeing if you can support in some tiny way. That would mean a lot to me, so thank you guys. So what have you been up to? I have been busy on an array of things, but there's a difference this year. I'm starting to find some balance between all the things I like to do: writing, making art, coaching. Oh, I love it. I love it. The things are coming together. I'm getting more and more projects that require my sensitivity, my human empathy, my warped sense of humour, all those things that make any of us an individual. And I'm getting asked to do that along with my writing, my art, different mixes. But those things are being pulled together by more and more clients, which is really interesting. I've had briefs where I'm being asked to interview people, whether it's clients or people that I'm writing about. I've been asked to illustrate it. I've been asked to write it. And I love that. I love that. Smashing together those different disciplines, because it's all the same human. It's all the same voice. And that's something that I talk about often on this show. But to me especially, I've got a brain that needs variation. I'm curious about writing. I'm curious about poetry. What happens if we put flash fiction with illustration? What happens if we put my sensitivity with that artist who needs some help, who's at a crossroads over there? And what if we illustrate something as part of that process? What if we do some drawing exercises? You see where this is going. It's I love it. I want that art school ethos where I'm getting to use my creativity, even in the structure and in the nature of the projects. That's what's happening this year. And it's somewhere I've been going for a while. But what I'll tell you as a cautionary tale is it can take years and it can take risk to get there. Now, I've had a couple of my most challenging years since I went into business as an illustrator, at a time when I've got arguably my strongest portfolio since I went into business in my entire life. And that brings about a certain degree of frustration and questioning myself. But I also think it's because I've had to take time away from my work as an illustrator to promote the creative condition, to build it, to lay foundations, to build websites, to write books, to amass over 300 different interviews, and to take on writing projects where it's maybe taking a little longer than what I'm getting paid for, but to prove and to show my acumen in that field, to build a portfolio so that I can go and seek the work I want to seek as a writer also. There's always that ebb and flow, like how much of your intellectual creativity do you use? Like, do you spend all of your hours only working on client projects? The risk there is that you burn out, that you lose your way a little bit because you're not attuned to the magic, the emotional creativity. That's the stuff that we need to say, that comes from the heart, that tunes in to our personal curiosity. Of course, a balance of the two is essential because we live under capitalism, so we have bills to pay. It's not like we can just spend all week on flights of fancy doing only the things we want to do when there's no remuneration. So that's the puzzle that I've been in the last few years, and I'm starting to now just really find some flow. I'm marketing regularly every week. I'm out there having conversations. I'm spending money to buy train tickets to go and have coffees with people, to have meetings, to have casual catch-ups, because I know that when I'm illuminated as a human and I'm out there being a part of things and I'm getting my sense of adventure by going on these little journeys A to B, that's something I call nomadicity within the Anatomy of Creativity framework that I run through the creative condition in my coaching, then I come back feeling pumped. And then when I have the solitude in my studio, I love all of that because I'm feeling it and it's still got the novelty. But if I do only one of the things, I tend to just lose a little bit of spark. So that's what's happening this year. And it finally feels like there's some direction on all fronts. There's things starting to happen. I'm marketing, I'm making the work, I'm having conversations, and it's starting to build. So after some real financial panic this year, that's where I'm at. Where are you at? Let me know. If I can help you through the coaching, I would love to do that. The pit stop is still on offer at £400 until the end of March. That's any booking up until the end of March. After that, it's either going to go up to 500 or 600. I'm undecided yet. It's funny because I've talked to my clients about where they stand money-wise, and I'm willing to make concessions and split the payments over a number of installments if that's going to help make it accessible to somebody. But it really is a good entry point because you get a full day's work out of me, a very intense day's work, 3 to 4 hours on the process of working through all of your stuff. We always both come away really quite wiped out but feeling energized. And then I have to go away, have a little break, and then come back and write up the notes. And I spend the same time again, 3 to 4 hours. And it calls upon my writing skills because I have to articulate this stuff so that it's engaging, actionable. It reminds you of what we talked about, but you get exercises and action points to really realign you with your best path, because we so easily lose that when we can't see the wood for our trees in our own circumstances. But that's what I've been doing. I've done 4 so far this year. They've all gone absolutely amazingly. I'm so excited about how well they've gone. That's not a brag. That's just that there's been chemistry with each person, and we jump on a 10-minute call before I commit to doing this, before I book anything in or confirm any obligation, because I have to feel that chemistry up front and know that I can truly help a person rather than just taking the money and giving, something that might be half-assed. I would never do that. So if that's of interest, get in touch. There's a little form on the creativecondition.com/coach. That's the coaching page. Fill out the form. Tell me your circumstances. Tell me how you think I can help. I'll have a look. Then we'll progress to a 10-minute call. We'll have a chat, no obligations, no strings. If we have a laugh and we go, do you know what? This isn't right for us. That's fine. I've done that with some people. We'll pull the plug there and then nobody gets hurt, no money changes hands. But if you want to go all the way, you want to book me in, we'll either do it in person, we'll do it on Zoom. Each works equally well depending where you are in the world. And then we work through everything. We get you back on track. I really love doing it. It's been going well this year. I've got some great conversations with some agencies about bringing that in terms of workshops and one-to-one with their exec level creative directors and the like. So if that also appeals, let me know. thecreativecondition.com. Big thank you to Illustration X. Let's get on to today's guest, Amie McNee. So I came across Amie through her brand new book, We Need Your Art. Stop messing around and make something. So it's coming out on Penguin, 13th of March 2025. It's an awesome book. When I read it, I couldn't stop. I went straight through the thing. It's actionable, it's funny, it's warm, it's real, it's vulnerable. It's all of the things that Amie is. Now, if you're aware of her Instagram channel, Inspired to Write, you'll be more than familiar with Amie's humanity, and it's absolutely magic. I wasn't. I came across it and I realised she had a book coming out, so we had a conversation with her PR people, and I was delighted when she was up for a chat. I had to believe she would be, because we're both working as coaches. We're both huge champions of human creativity as a necessity, not a luxury, not something that only certain people can do, but we all need to make, create and belong. And Amie and I shared that. So I was delighted when the PR people got back and said she'd love to chat, loves what you're up to. And we did have a brilliant conversation. So that's what I'm bringing you today. So her book, here's the blurb. From Amie McNee, the voice behind Inspired to Write, a manifesto on the vital human importance of creating, with guidance for all artists in all endeavours, whether they're starting their journey or seeking a fresh perspective. In We Need Your Art, Amie McNee calls on artists and aspiring artists of all kinds to do the work they're meant to do, create. Using her own experiences as a novelist and the inspiration she's shared as a creative coach, McNee guides you on why we need your art and how you can make it happen, starting with a 2-week reset plan to help to kickstart your creative habit. This isn't about writing your great novel in a month or painting a masterpiece in a flurry of inspiration. Rather, this process is about practicing small, sustainable, creative steps every day over time. 500 words of writing each day, a pencil sketch every evening, so that you avoid burnout, produce consistent and reliable content on your own terms, and begin to see yourself as an artist. with frank and empowering conversations on the many issues creatives face, including imposter syndrome, perfectionism, procrastination, and the inner critic, as well as invitations to coronate yourself and celebrate your ambition. McNee provides the framework and encouragement you need to begin to take your art seriously. Each chapter also includes journal prompts that help you apply what you have learned to your new life. We Need Your Art is a revolutionary reprogramming of everything we have been taught and told about being creative, removing the shame and fear we may feel at dubbing ourselves artists and inviting us to create proudly with celebration. This book is a warm hug, a pep talk, the wise teacher you always wanted, the loving parent you needed, and the fire in your belly that you need to get roaring. So there you have it. It's absolutely brilliant. I can testify to that. I read it in short order. I've read it again since. It's kind of a regular go-to. I said the same of Duncan Wardle, ex-head of innovation and creativity at Disney, who I had on the show, and he sent me his book, The Imagination Emporium. Absolutely brilliant. So many great resources out there at the moment. You can find a load at thecreativecondition.com with the reading list. I recently added Amy's book there, along with Rageshri Deriyawan, who's coming up on the show, a HIV and sexual health doctor, talking about truly listening to humans and why we need to improve on that, not just in healthcare, but for creativity, for humanity. So much good stuff coming up on the show. Thank you for listening, guys. If you get a second, please do rate, review, subscribe. Most importantly, tell somebody. If you like this show, say, I just listened to a wicked podcast. I think you've been to it. That's enough. Word of mouth really helps this. I would massively appreciate that. Cheers, guys. Big thank you to the founding sponsor of the show, Illustration X. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Inspired to Write founder and author of We Need Your Art. Stop messing about and make something, Amie McNee.
I feel very grateful that I had parents who I think their creativity had been deprived of them as kids, and so they had a very huge intention to make sure that I was allowed to chase whatever curiosity came my way. So I feel very blessed that any inkling I had, I was really into acting from very, very young, loved storytelling, like with my body, and they were both just 100% with it. I'm incredibly blessed with the parents that I had, even though I feel like they didn't get a chance to chase their dreams. They are now in their older age. They're allowing themselves permission. I mean, you can't, when you've got me as a daughter, like, come on. But they really encouraged me. There was never a dream too big. You know, Mum would take me to the most bizarre auditions and, you know, stand in line with me, and Dad would, so encouraging. So as a kid, I had support in terms of allowing to chase whatever was taking my eye. But a huge amount of it was storytelling. I just wanted to either write or I wanted to act, and I wanted to tell people stories, and I wanted to tell myself stories. And that was a huge part of how I think I self-soothed as a kid, was through storytelling.
That's fascinating. And I'm a parent of young twins. My kid, I've got a boy and a girl, and they're about to turn 5. And we do little plays on the field at the bottom of the road. And it's so fascinating that I have the comparison aspect, just in the best sense, that I can see these two chalk and cheese characters, these little humans. And as someone who's in love with creativity and also benefited from exactly what you just described there, which was the perfect balance of no pressure to do anything I didn't want to, but unconditional support in whatever made me happy.
So beautiful.
It is beautiful, and I'm trying to pass it down, and I'd love to just to step off and observe and watch the cues that they're giving me as humans. Now, I guess the question I'm going with that is, you're a creative coach too, and you work with helping people to access their own creativity in the purest way. Is that an approach that's universal, you know, with adults and kids?
Yeah. I mean, no, you hear fucking horror stories, don't you? You hear horror stories of kids who are deprived of play and creativity. And we get enough of that as adults, but to not be given that as kids is so horrendous, and it's so hard. And I think we're told culturally, we can be told from a very young age, and we can take it on as kids as art not being serious enough. Like, you need to be focusing on more adult things, or, you know, school's more important, academics are more important, even sport, I think. I know my partner had a huge pressure for sport over creativity, especially as a man, I think. He had that societal pressure of, you know, you're a big boy, you should be playing rugby, but he wanted to be on stage. You know, those kind of tug of wars that happen in schooling and education systems as well. But no, I speak to so many artists who have never, ever been gifted permission to just create and play and have fun.
So true. The society thing is really interesting, isn't it? And I feel like in the way we are right now in 2025, there's I want to know if you agree and you've observed this yourself, but I see one end of the spectrum, there's a almost an awakening. Maybe that's too strong of a word, but there's a social psychology shift that's happening, and it's moving towards an understanding of the human condition and mental health and well-being, and how creativity and artistry fits into that. Then you go the other end, and I think this is probably the same in any time of serious shift. There's those that want to restrict more than ever and hold on to the old model. That's interesting to me. Where
Yeah.
do you see that too?
Oh, totally. I completely agree. And I think you're right. In moments of shifts, you're going to feel that pullback more than ever. You're going to have people who react very strongly to wanting to keep us the same. And I do feel that I don't think the word awakening is too strong. I think that artistry and creativity isn't being given enough attention as perhaps some of our other understanding of the human condition is. I think, and I say it all the time, I think creativity is a missing pillar in self-development. We're really interested in a lot of different ways that humans function and how it is we relate to each other. But I think a lot of the time we do forget the importance of art and creativity and play, because I think societally we have kept it either in childhood or for retirement, and understanding what art can give us as adults and understanding how it's not just like a modality for healing, but a modality for like serious self-understanding and self-development and like knowing ourselves and thriving. I don't think that's being spoken about enough, but I can feel it more and more. And what the work that we do, Ben, like that sits at the center of it. Like we need to bring the conversation back to the arts. This is a very serious and important part of being a human.
It's utterly critical, and I think that we can access ourselves on a level that is so much deeper than what language can articulate. Language is almost responsive to something we've already come to understand. I see art and creativity as delving into what's beneath that surface that we are yet to understand.
Yes, I love that. You're right. Maybe it was inevitable that it was the last thing that we really truly embrace, because it is beyond language, and there is something almost mystical or mythical about it, where it's like we're being able to express something that we cannot do with our usual way of expression with language. And so therefore it's harder to understand, it's harder to grasp what it's actually doing to us. In fact, I write about it in the book that art has so many modalities for healing that it's very hard to explain that to people. It's like, it's not like a Nurofen, which is going to help, inflammation and pain reduction. Like it doesn't just have one thing that it does. Art has so many things that it does to us physiologically, mentally. And it's like almost too much. We can hardly understand the impact that creativity has in our lives.
Here's an example of that. And I think I see it as a real sharp end example. It's Paul McCartney. And the reason I say that is I went to see him with my dad. Took my dad to his first gig at 70. Oh
my God, I love that.
It's incredible, isn't it? And my mum's first gig was only a year earlier at 64. And it was the Chemical Brothers.
Oh my God, I love this. What a few years for your parents. How incredible.
But the thing is, and that speaks to what you mentioned actually earlier about your parents, not being denied, but almost growing up in times when things
wasn't
were
accessible.
hard.
Yeah, it wasn't accessible.
Yes. And so at this Paul McCartney gig, my dad was kind of spellbound by and we all were, by the energy of the guy at 80. He was you could almost see the aura and the energy and the colours around him. And I remember watching him or being interviewed by Rick Rubin, and we talked about him being 80 and being just this almost, just spiritual in his love of creativity. And I'm a massive believer. Now, don't get me wrong. It's probably been fortunate in terms of genetics and other factors that contribute to a long life. But I would argue anybody who denied exactly what you've just described about the physiological healing power of art, because I feel it, and it gives me such life energy on a day-to-day basis.
It's so beautiful. And I think artists have been saying this for so long, like this is doing something to me, like cellularly. And now the field of research is expanding more and more. Like this isn't something artists are just, we're not being woo-woo, like art transforms you. Like we are seeing huge amounts of differences in our biology when we participate in the act of creation. And so I love this idea that art is prolonging life. That's the guy, the Don't Die guy at the moment. Oh, what's his name? He's so famous. He's obsessed with not dying. And I've been watching his stuff. I'm so obsessed with him, and I don't know his name. Anyway, I watch his stuff, and he's, it's like taking like 60 pills a day, like trying to finesse like the art of prolonging life. And I'm like, where's your art? Where's your creativity? We're missing it. We don't understand. It's such a fucking potent medicine for human beings.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Brian Johnson,
Okay, I'm not aware, so I need
the
to.
don't die guy.
I need to look him up. So just to go back to childhood, then, did you feel that magic? You talked about magic there, and I certainly felt it as a kid. And what's interesting is I would go through periods. So my mum was a really good drawer. She went to art college. She didn't take it beyond that, but she's just always done it for the sheer love of it, which is beautiful. Incredible drafts person. Like, her work is stunning. So I picked up on that and I drew. But what that did was kind of almost narrow my creativity in a sense, because there would be times when I didn't feel like drawing, and I questioned it because I pinned a lot of my identity to that one skill. What I now realize, looking back at the age of 41, is that I was far more creative when I was simply playing with my friends in nature. So whether it was that and just this sense of possibility and being free and having the benefit of a peaceful, I didn't grow up under threat of war. I was very blessed in that regard, or any of the other troubles that some young people might. What that meant for me is I had the freedom to be bored and to feel that sense of magic. And when I would draw, it was invariably when I felt the magic in something else in my life. Now, this would come up in the most, just the colour of a football kit, the colour of somebody's wrestling attire. I'm a huge wrestling fan to this day, and it was as ridiculous as it is. All of that stuff fertilised my imagination. And drawing was this tool that enabled me to articulate that in a way that I had no other way of doing that. Did you feel that way yourself in childhood when you were acting?
That. Yeah, what a beautiful way to describe like the process of art. I think a lot of us forget that we have to live our lives in order to be able to create. Like, I think our creation is not, we can't fill every hour of our lives with creation, because creation stems from living life and witnessing magic. And then we alchemize like our experiences into the art. So I really love that. And I think it's really important to recognize that. And oftentimes when I am feeling blocked or stuck, it's because I haven't fucking done anything in my life for a bit. I've just been at my computer typing away, writing. I need to go experience and be and relish this beautiful life. And I have such a huge capacity for joy. And so when I can go be in the world and experience the magic, I feel like I have and I think artists in general have an eye for magic. We can see it in the world, like stuff delights us, and we need to have a practice of being out there, being delighted or being moved in some way, so that we can come back to the art and alchemize it into that. Whereas a lot of us, I think, oh, it's the art that is the magic itself. It's like there's a huge process of this, and it's a journey, and we can't just sit at the end of it.
Absolutely. And I often point to the value of the negative emotion spectrum too. And now that is far less sustainable over a long period of time, because stress and anxiety and all those kind of feelings, they very quickly torch us inside. But as catharsis, as healing, some of the most wonderful stories that I've had on this show have been people who suffered great adversity in their early years or later down the line. So it's this, we're almost these filters, for what's out there, these things that happen to us, good, bad, middle, it doesn't really matter. Art is an expression of that, isn't it? And it's a way for us to share those experiences with other people.
It's a processing tool. I think it's how we understand ourselves, our lives, and without this incredible magical medium where we get to, often without words. For a lot of us, we're not using words. I'm a writer, so I do. But how we alchemize our experiences into something else is so important. And a lot of us who don't create leave things stagnant or misunderstood or just unprocessed because we don't know how to process them. How could you? Some of the trauma we've been through is too big that really only art could ever get a handle on. So yeah, it's an incredible and beautiful tool. And that's why I speak to a lot of professional artists, but I also want to speak to people who are just have other vocations and just you still need art. You need it to process. You need it to know yourself, and you need it because it's fucking delightful and fun, and it will change your life. It's such a human need to create.
It really is. There's a generation of young people at the moment that are really going to suffer from the systemic, and you said it beautifully in the book, infantilization of art. I recently interviewed a drama teacher on the show who I met locally, and she does incredible work. She's very young for a teacher, 24, and she's doing amazing work with a drama club. She started off her own back because there wasn't enough time in the curriculum for the kids. And she told me how the kids who were kicked out of all the other classes would show up at the door first, and they would be the best in acting. Now, drama and dance, that they're not in the education curriculum in a much bigger way makes me quite angry. I have to manage
Oh, it makes
that
me
anger
so
and
angry.
transform it into action. And it's one of my big goals as a quite new coach is to find ways to make money through my coaching from the people who can afford to pay me money, so that I can then go and work with people like Abby and help those young people.
Oh my
That's
God,
a
yeah.
dream to me.
Me too. I mean, I was such a dreamer as a child, and I was so obviously so creative, and I owe everything to her and to the fact that I was allowed to explore my love of the stage, to explore my love of words. I went to a school that encouraged the arts, and I owe everything to that. And she is why I'm here today, and therefore the systems that supported her are why I'm here today. And it is so important to me that kids get a chance to follow these curiosities, and we get a chance to express ourselves in these ways. And you're right, like that is such important work, Ben. And I can imagine it's feeling more important than ever now that you have children, but we need to give kids spaces to play.
We do, and they're the next generation of everything we can think of that's important in this world. And it's all well and good if I'm looking after my kids and taking good care of them, but they're still going to encounter all those other children, and I want their lives to be enriched, not threatened by those kids. And the only reason they're threatened by those kids is when those systems fail those kids, if that makes sense.
I've been thinking a lot about mentorship lately, and thinking about how so many artists fear becoming teachers, like it's some sort of failure or the second best option. But I think that, I mean, it's a narrative that absolutely needs to be obliterated. But I think that even if you are thriving as an artist, we have a duty to mentorship. We need to take care of the upcoming generations, or even if it's not, generations who are younger than us, we have a duty to take care of our creative brethren, and that's fucking all of us. And to encourage and give permission for others to create, play, and to take this seriously. And yeah, I feel like that there is something there that we don't really talk about a lot. I feel like teaching and mentorship is like only for those who've really made it, or, they want to make it into a business. But I think mentorship should be something that artists think of all the time. And it's something that should be a part of our lives.
I think so, and that can be anything from a formal arrangement right through to, I think of my dog walks. My dog walks every morning. They're beautiful. They're like therapy with big bunches of people who are trying to manage these dogs, and it's So I'm always doing it in my life, and I think that's the thing about art, isn't it? It's a lifestyle. It's not a vocation.
Yeah, I'm always telling anyone who will listen to me, this is for the long term. This ain't something you're doing, this year. Like, you're an artist. This is what you are here. This is like it's your anointing. It is your title, like, and it doesn't go away. So this is not something that you need to like plan to end, or like plan to peak even. This is who you are and how you move through the world.
Absolutely. I wanted to touch upon what really made me laugh in the book was your switch from employment to full-time crying, which is just let's talk about that.
It was full-time crying.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because I think my first book was called Champagne and Wax Crayons, and it was very much
what a great title.
Yeah, I've got my editor to thank for that. And it was essentially a memoir of someone trying to turn creativity into a career, and all the
I would love to read that,
and the emotions that I'll send you a link. But it's that was memoir. That was so therapeutic for me to write, when I probably should have been promoting to my illustration clients. We'll get to should soon, but
yes.
But I want to talk about your experience with full-time crying. Take us through what you mean by that, because I think this is going to resonate with so many of my listeners.
God, I have so many thoughts. Whenever anyone brings this up, and I almost have a panic attack, because I'm like, there are so many things to say right now. Basically, my story was that I didn't want a job, and I've been learning to say this out loud. I didn't want a job. I had all these different jobs, and I was like, all of these jobs fucking suck. They don't light me up. How come I have to spend my whole life doing something meaningless for somebody else? I can't believe this is what my life's going to be. And I had this calling, as I had always had throughout my childhood. I just wanted to make stuff. I wanted to write. I wanted to tell stories. And I saw everyone around me just being like, well, this is just life. We gotta get on with this. We gotta just do what the world has told us to do. And so a lot of my friends, and they still are, they're in jobs they hate. And I just, for some reason, couldn't fucking stick it. I was like, no, I want to create. I want to write. I want to sell books. And so I'm very stubborn, and I have a lot to give thanks for because of that stubbornness, because I did not stop. I worked a plethora of the most bizarre jobs, just couldn't stay in one for very long because I couldn't stick it out, all the while trying to make a living from my writing. And at one point, I lost my waitressing job and I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to go all in. I'm going to try and be a writer. And as I say in the book, I gave up employment for full-time crying. I was so fucking unwell and deeply, deeply stressed by this full-time creative life. And there were many things that go into that. One was a deep shame for taking my art this seriously and for avoiding what everybody else seemed to be able to just take, which was regular, normal employment, working for somebody else. I felt so embarrassed that I was taking myself so seriously as a writer when nobody else was taking me seriously. I was being rejected left, right, and center by publishers. I literally only had rejection to my name, and I was putting myself out there, begging to be seen, and I wasn't seen. And so every day I just cried. I could not get a handle on my emotions. I felt so small. I felt so insignificant. And most of all, I felt so stupid for taking myself as seriously as I was. And that was a huge part of my life that I had to navigate. And the only reason why I really was able to move out of that was I started my journaling practice. And I was able to start looking at the way that I was talking to myself, the stories that I had internalized about who I am and what I was doing. And as I wrote them on the pages of my journal, first of all, I was able to see them and be like, whoa, I'm holding a huge amount of pain. And then I was also able to rewrite them. And now, 10 years, no, it's not 10 years, like maybe 6, 7 years later, I'm a full-time creative and I'm very fucking joyful and I do not cry every day, but it was a very long journey together.
It's very inspiring and it's very, it's just so common. And I've been a full-time creative professional now of many things, illustrator predominantly, but also many books, writing, podcasting, whatever. I guess I got that brain that needs variation and I follow my heart to a degree.
Basically, all of us do.
Yeah.
The niche down artist is missing out on stuff.
Yeah, that's another really interesting part of this book, actually. It's great. But you're absolutely right. And even coming in from Christmas last year, I had, what felt like the closest I've come to a panic attack in my life. I've creativity has given me a mental resilience. So I haven't suffered too badly with mental illness in my life. But last week, just coming in with 2 young twins and financial pressure and then feeling overwhelmed by a complete lack of structure in my practice.
Oh, God,
juggling too much. We're never too far away from that. Now, that initial switchover is a really important one to look at. What do you think it is about? Because this isn't about seeking external validation, but it's about the systemic, again, as you said, infantilization of art and not seeing it in the same light as starting another business, isn't it?
It is. There was a lot that was going on for me. There's a lot that's going on for all artists when we go full time, because not only are we leaving a huge amount of structure, like our industrialist work systems are incredibly structured. We have managers to report to, like there is so much there to just keep us in line. And then we only have ourselves to answer to. That's a whole conversation. It can be incredibly difficult to be your own boss and to understand like how you like to work, because we've never been told to figure that out. We're just told how we should work. And so creatives have this huge job of figuring out how is it you want to move through your days. And that's huge and can come with, again, a lot of shame and a lot of trial and error. And so that was a lot of my pain, was just figuring out, like, I don't know how to work on my own without someone looking over me. But I think at a much deeper level, yeah, it was just that infantilization of what I was doing. Everyone was so worried about me, and everybody thought that I was refusing to grow up. I had this huge feeling that I just hadn't become an adult and everyone else around me had become an adult. But I was just demanding more from my life than everybody else. And I say this a lot, but I wanted a life that sparkled and that was filled with creativity and that was filled with art. And that's what I wanted. And nobody else was asking for that around me. But I was stubborn and I stuck to it, and it was hard and I had to work for it. But I wanted a life that would delight me. And it took me a while to realize that's what I wanted. I thought I was lazy. I thought, why can't you just stick it out and get a job? Why can everyone else just do something boring with your life, Amie? Like, what's wrong? Why are you so lazy? You just can't do boring work. But I wasn't lazy. I just wanted more. I wanted art. I wanted sparkles. I wanted a fucking delightful life. And thank God I had those high expectations. And I want to say as well that, like, Ben and anyone listening, like, you also deserve to demand a life that sparkles. Like, we all deserve that.
Yes, and that can come in many forms too, which is really
Oh, it's
interesting
so
because
many forms.
I spoke to people recently who feel happier having, whether it's a bar job or something else, to give them financial support while they build their practice. I know friends who jumped in the deep end right out of university and lived on beans and toast, and that was their mindset, and it worked for them. I couldn't handle that financial pressure, so I took a longer road. And I remember coming out of uni and setting myself a 2-year goal to become a freelance illustrator. And my goal was Euro 2008 football tournament, so that I could watch it without having to book days off a job. I thought
I
you have to bring
absolutely
it.
love that.
You have to bring it into your own circumstances and structure, don't you? And this is another a beautiful thing that you talk about in the book is understanding your own energy structure, and
Mm.
and being attuned to yourself and spending enough time learning that so that you don't follow the shoulds and the
Oh
other
my God, yeah.
examples.
When we choose to rebel against everything that's expected from us, i.e., when we choose to be artists, we have to figure out what works for us. And again, we have grown up in systems, just system upon system upon system, which says this is how you will work. And so when we have the freedom to use our energy how we want, to work how we want, to pay attention to what we want, everyone's going to be so different. How much risk tolerance do you like? There's no shoulds in when you're creating your life that sparkles, your life of creativity. You've got to figure out, would I prefer a part-time job? Would that make my life feel safer? Therefore, I could enjoy it more. Am I someone who really likes to create late at night? Therefore, don't be getting up at 6 a.m. because that's what everybody else is doing. Being an artist requires huge amounts of bravery to say no to all the shoulds you've ever been told and to figure out what actually works for you. And that is why I love us, because we are paving the way in that nobody else does. Like nobody else does this shit. No one else figures out what works for them. They just do what they're told. We have to. And it is brave and it is hard, but it's beautiful.
Hmm. I think at a societal level, I think that we always had a critical role to play as artists, but I think that now with the divisions, very calculated divisions that we've seen, driven by, whether it's big tech bros or all these reasons why. I remember after the recent election, so I went on the dog walk, and there was a mixed bag of emotions. That some people felt happy that the ex-Conservative government had gone. Others felt more alarmed by the rise of Farage's lot. And
Mm.
and the first thing I said is we have to start finding community spaces. That's how we start to heal here, because we don't know our neighbours like we once did. Social media has played a part in that. We're a little more isolated. But what I see when people come together and look one another in the eye is just the understanding that we're all just trying to get by. We're all, none of us are particularly bad, or the way the media likes to portray them. I think that art has a really important role to play in fixing that.
That's so beautiful. I love the way you frame that. You're right. Like the way that we can, spew vitriol on one another online is very different when you look another human being in the fucking eye and see that they are in pain. And the way we communicate when we are with each other is so different to the way that we communicate behind our screens. And I love the idea that art could be a part of solving this problem. In the book, and in my fucking favorite book that I reference all the time in my book, Your Brain on Art, they talk about how yes, art physiologically heals us. Art mentally is changing us. And art is also an absolutely crucial point in making healthy communities. And when you take away creativity and the arts, like culture from communities, you get like chaos. Like our education goes down, our health goes down. Like communally, we need art. And so I love the idea that if we can, and I live in a village that has art at its center, and it's you can see what it does for us. We commune together, we consume art together, we create art together. It creates a community that knows one another, and that knows one another in a very vulnerable way. Because making art, even consuming art, is very vulnerable. You have to show parts of yourself. And this world needs vulnerability more than ever. We need vulnerability. And a very beautiful way to access vulnerability is through creation.
You're 100% right, and it's there's a really simple form of it, which is simply being with other people and being able to be your authentic self. Because yeah, I did one of my favorite interviews, and I did this about 2 years ago now with Mac Ferrari and Jake 100, who were the co-founders of Bike Storms. I don't know if you're aware of Bike Storms, but it's a big ride out of kids in London. A lot of the kids are from estates, and they go out on mountain bikes, and it's gotten really big thanks to Mac's hard work. And Mac's story is that he lost loved ones to murder through getting caught up in gang violence in his younger years. To then make amends in his own life for this, he wanted to help the next generation of people who were at risk of following in those footsteps. The bike was his way of doing it. He didn't know what it was going to be. He was riding dirt bikes at the time. He saw these kids who would come and watch the dirt bikes on their mountain bikes. He saw them pulling tricks and the likes. And so his thing was, okay, that's enough. Let's start something. Let's give it a name. Let's get them on the street. And he talks about how he had to override his ego because initially he wanted a youth club, and he thought, if I do that, I'm going to limit it to one locality. So his thing was, we do it on the streets. We ride out. We get other kids, and it's grown into this huge movement. And they did a beautiful. They were a part of Stormzy's set at Glastonbury on the Pyramid stage, circling him on the bikes, and it's become this thing where it's about identity. It's about vulnerability. It's about and the best thing is, some of them don't even have to speak. They just turn up on their bike, and by being there and feeling that energy, that's enough.
I love that. I think sport is interesting, and I think sport and art can do similar things in community, and you see a lot with run clubs as well. Like, sport brings people out to be with each other, and that's something that art can do too. And I think I worry that artists are more naturally introverted, and a lot of us, I think, find it harder. I mean, me too, super introverted, to come and create in communal spaces or come and share in communal spaces, whereas going for a run or going on a bike ride, like, perhaps is more accessible. But I do want artists to know that our work should be public, and it should be a part of communities.
It absolutely should. And when we see it done well, it's the glue, isn't it?
So beautiful, like profound change. I was Dr. Rosario Jackson. I've mentioned her in the book. She's a social worker, and she focuses mostly on just bringing arts back into systemically oppressed communities. She focuses on that before she focuses on bringing education back, before she focuses on crime. Like, that she brings art back into the communities, and the communities fucking fix themselves. Like, bring back culture, bring back vulnerability and creation to communities, and you find healing with those people.
Must try and contact her. That sounds like
unbelievable.
Yeah, like a real. Yeah, that sounds like a podcast I'd love to do.
Yeah, I would listen to the fuck out of that. Like, it's so important.
Can we talk about perfectionism a little bit? Perfectionism and procrastination. These are two really fascinating parts of the book. I don't know. I have a question. Talk to me about them.
Just go. I mean, these are the two subjects I probably talk about the most, because it's unfucking, like, you have to do it. You have to move through these stages. No artist gets to avoid procrastination, and all artists in some form have experiences with perfectionism, and they are siblings. They deeply interplay with each other. But when we do something as vulnerable as art, again, like, I keep coming back to this, I believe that making art is the most vulnerable thing we do as humans. It's just so exposing. When we do something as vulnerable as creation, we are going to want to run procrastination, and we're going to want to make it so good it cannot be criticized, perfectionism. So they're really, at their heart, they're just beautiful little defense mechanisms, because what you're doing is very, very brave and very, very scary. And so we cannot avoid them, but we must learn how to take care of ourselves and make sure that they don't take over as we navigate them. So I'm much more of a procrastinator than I am a perfectionist. I have something in me that is, like, inherently messy, which I am so grateful for. But I still come across perfectionism in so many different ways within my creativity. At the beginning, when I first became a full-time artist, perfectionism actually turned up in the way that I was creating, because I was obsessed with creating from 9 to 5, because I thought that made me look more like an adult. And I was like a perfectionist about how I would do it. And I was like, I have to do this, I have to do that. And again, it was full-time crying. It was just crying 9 to 5. I couldn't write anything. It's not how I wanted to work. No one writes 9 to 5. It's so silly. But it was that, I've got to, if I can do it like that, then no one can question what I'm doing, because I'm taking it so seriously. So there's so many different ways these two roadblocks or these two phenomenons happen in our lives, but they're something that we need to look out for, and we need to learn how to take care of ourselves through them.
We do. And I have this framework within my own coaching practice called the anatomy of creativity, and it's like kind of an ecosystem of many things that comprise creativity. Of course, not all of them. That would be impossible to try and do. But one of the exercises that I get my clients to do, and are you familiar with Top Trumps, the game?
Oh, yes, I am.
So I use that kind of system, that numerical system, to rank any number of personality traits. There's no real rules to it. You could look at anything. So I use my own as an example. I'm quite haphazard and clumsy by nature. For the longest time, I disliked that about myself. It's a management brief, to not break crockery in the house, basically. But what I realized at a certain point was that when you flip that on its head, and it's something I call the duality of everything, there's a different way to look at it. And it's the genesis of my art style, which is very raw, and it's inks and spray paints. And so were it not for that undesirable trait, then I wouldn't have had this career that I've adored for the last 17, 18 years. So I encourage my clients to look at things in the same way. And it's an interesting way to challenge perfectionism. To like you said, and actually what's really interesting about what you said there is not just looking at the end result as the perfectionism, but the systems and the
systems, yeah. She'll sneak in. Perfectionism will sneak in every step of the way. I think artists can get very preoccupied with the craft and perfectionism within craft. That's where we most often talk about it. And it is obviously rife within the craft, the making. But yeah, make sure that you look at how doing it perfectly infiltrates, and also sharing art, like marketing, like perfectionism in like the way we put our art out there is like so bad. And we need to really pay attention to that. But I absolutely love that theory. I know that what makes an artist great is the ways in which they are idiosyncratic, messy, not perfect. Just like I love the scrappiness of the artist, and I want to see the human in your creation. And so when we strive for perfectionism, we're striving to eradicate all of that makes us interesting. And we don't really understand that, because what we're trying to do is actually just make us infallible. But it's the fallibility that makes art beautiful.
It really is. Yeah, and especially now in this age of automation, when we're going to be seeing more and more.
Oh my God, yeah.
Quite soulless stuff that's based on pre-existing stuff, because that's what specifically talking about AI. I'm not completely demonizing AI, but that's the real risk of it there. So
100%.
To look at that positively, does that not create a real opportunity for even more human work, and there maybe even a necessity?
Oh my God, we need to understand that right now, like human art is going to become a more and more treasured commodity. It could be exciting. Like human art might be more highly valued the more AI comes into our lives. So stop trying to be fucking inhuman with your art and allow it to be messy. You will not 100% love what you make, and that's good. That makes it human. And like lean into that. Welcome the mess.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts of your book, and I hope that you might indulge me in the game of failure tennis, because I think
yes, please.
Your listing of failures really, it made me laugh because I have a dark sense of humor, but also because I relate to them so much, especially the things like putting on events and people not turning up and all that kind of stuff. I thought we could just share a few and have a bit of fun with it, because I think it's what I especially loved was not shirking away from the use of the word failure, and also that failure is fine.
We have a big sign. I obviously make a lot of love notes and signs. It's in my partner's study. It says, "We fail in this house. We fail in this house." I need failure all the fucking time. Like, otherwise, what am I doing? I'm not trying. I'm not putting myself out there. I'm not pushing the boat out enough. I'm not ruffling feathers enough. A lot of artists want me to not use the word failure. And I seriously and gently but firmly ask people to reconsider this. It's never a full stop. When I say failure, I'm not saying, and that's the end of my career. I'm just saying, I tried something, it didn't really work. It didn't work. So we try again. And sometimes they hurt more than others, but failure will always be a part of the creator's life. And we need to get used to it. We need to get excited about it. We need to fail in this house.
It's one of the best compasses for getting to the right place, is it not?
It's way better than success.
Yeah.
It's so much more stimulating creatively to fail than to succeed. Because once you've succeeded, you just, that worked. And therefore that's the only information you have. But to know that something doesn't work, it's like, okay, well, what else could work? It opens up so many more. I don't know, for me, my brain gets a lot more from failing than success, because I can just repeat the success. Anyway, let's do failure tennis. Let's start with me pamphleting the shit out of my local area, paying for paid ads, putting my whole soul into this fucking creative workshop, then having my friend who I paid to be there because she was taking pictures, James, and two other people coming who I basically begged to come. And it was meant to be like for like 30, 40 people. That one was an Aui's one.
Uh, all right, that's really good. I started a thing with a friend who I was running a music project with in Manchester called Deck Fool. He was just getting started as an electronic musician and producer. Basically, we had a project called Quenched Music, and it was our little vehicle that we made to work with musicians through our respective practices. In my infinite wisdom, I thought I could paint on big banners while he DJ'd in various venues, completely overlooking the fact that every club manager would freak out when they saw bottles of Indian ink turning up and paintbrushes, and this 6'1" man with the rhythm of a 1980s action figure trying to perform in front. Now, I do live art, but I'm much better doing that as a dedicated live art practice. After two gigs, especially the second one, when nobody had told the new manager of the venue that we were even turning up with all our paints and everything else, disastrous. Two things in, we had to can it. But, we ruled something out.
Exactly. And I know that both of us learned huge amounts and that these failures probably gave more than we even realized to other people, like there were still two people that came to my workshop and who knows how that impacted them. And people, you still did your thing two times. And I think a lot of people always love to be like, oh, it's not a failure because you don't know who it would have impacted. I'm still big on calling it a failure because I didn't do what I wanted it to do. And I just want us to stop being so tentative around the word. Like, I fucked it. It didn't work. Okay, I'm going to give you a few more. I did a course called Write Your Novel course. And even though the fees for hosting it were like so small, I could not make a profit. Nobody wanted to sign up. It was probably maybe like 5 years ago. I had a big social media following and nobody signed up basically. So I had to pull it because it was costing me rather than giving me any money. And it took so long to make.
Yeah, oh God, I've got so many of these, but I'll give. Do you know what's an interesting one? I'll give you the thing that I alluded to there, the music project. So we ran that for about 3 years, and I used it as the basis for a talk recently. And this talk was at my old university, and the theme of the conference week that university do for the design department was close but no cigar. So it was interesting.
Oh, interesting.
Open-ended to every speaker, and so I used Quenched Music as the thing that if you were to look from the outside in, it was a flash in the pan, it went away, never really went anywhere. For a little time, I kind of felt bad about that. But with hindsight, I realized that was the most important vehicle I've ever created because, yes, it failed. It was a failure. However, through that failure, I opened doors into interviewing, writing. I got into the music industry in this ecosystem that enabled me to talk to amazing people and to find skills I never knew I had or was interested in and follow them unconditionally because it's also haphazard and chaotic in independent music. So yes, failure, but also a really important failure.
Oh, so important. I was just thinking about how I think in the book, I say that I spent a lot of money recording my audiobooks. Because I self-published all my fiction. And so it's expensive to record audiobooks and they just basically have never made a profit. And I think I wrote that in my We Need Your Art book. But since finishing that book, I finished that book about a year ago, my audiobooks fucking popped off. And they're now the biggest way I make money from my fiction. So it's like, you never know.
It's interesting, isn't it? You've helped me in a really big way through your book, in a very specific way. I'll tell you what it is. It's so I've got 5 fiction books, all short.
Oh my God, I love how multidisciplinary you are.
It's hard to handle up here sometimes, but all of it I love and believe in. It's just
so beautiful. I love it. Yeah, no, I mean, I really hear
you. Yeah. But so I wrote these 5 books, and I believe wholeheartedly in every single one of them. Then last year, I something had to go in my practice. I was overwhelmed. I couldn't handle all the things I was doing. Fiction didn't go, but it was, okay, we'll pause that for the moment while I focus on this. But actually, your book, I've gone blank on the title for it, but the building the trust with yourself again.
Yeah.
It's helped to rekindle it. And what's beautiful about that is I'd gone from, okay, well, we'll just pause that. actually coming into this year, it's like, no, these are 5 things that I could be making a bit more passive income from. But I don't need to do it all now. I don't need to have a big goal. I just need to start somewhere, as you preach very wonderfully. So as I've started this year, and I did the first one 2 nights ago, I've got these marketing courses that I paid for ages ago and never did them. I'd lost the trust in myself, as you
to show
explain
up
in the book. Yeah, to show up. Now, I showed up for the first time the other night. I got my new exercise book. I started the courses, but not in a way where, like you said, let's fix everything now and do it all big. No, let's take a small step. Next week, I come back and take a second small step. And all of a sudden, I've got this wholesome feeling that practice is alive again. It's all it takes. It's awesome.
My God, it's amazing. It's just a little spark that we need so often. I love that. And again, I think it speaks back to what we were talking about before. It's like, you're here. Those books are here for you for the long term. Like, they will be with you until you die, and they are worth sharing until you die. And they'll be worth sharing after you die. Like, this isn't about, oh my God, I need to do it all right now. Right now. It's like, you're in this for the long haul. This is your vocation. This is you. So yes, you need to make sure that you're showing up in small baby ways to remind yourself that you're taking this seriously. But so many of us are like, well, I need to do absolutely everything this Wednesday.
It's putting too much on something. It's that whole thing of when you, even on any given work day, when you sit down to create and you look at what's at the end of the day that you need to achieve, that's enough to rock you and kind of go, oh my God, how am I going to get this done?
Yeah.
But how about, let's just think, what do I need to get done in this hour, and how am I going to enjoy that moment? That's
so beautiful.
That's something that getting a little older and wiser has helped me to take better control.
It's huge. Like, I mean, I'm like speaking of this, and it's because I fucking struggle with it. Like every day I'm like coaching myself to come, because I also have like a bajillion ideas, and I take all my ideas incredibly seriously. And so I have a notes app that's just filled with me. I journal in the morning on paper, but I need my notes app all through the day to talk to myself. And I wrote one the other day. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to find it, but I just had to talk myself off the ledge, because I was like, it is an emergency. I have 20 ideas, and if they are not done by this evening, then we might as well not do them. And I just had to slow myself down. Can I read it?
Of course you can. Please do.
Yeah. Oh, no, wait, that's not it. Oh my God, the notes app is just like a treasure file of half absolute crap and half absolute genius. Essentially, it was basically like, there is absolutely no rush. Because I trust myself, I can know that there is no rush. All of these things will come to pass. Your ideas are on time. They are going to develop on time. Like, you are on time, like on the path, exactly where you're meant to be. There is no rush. And I think artists, especially when you're in that creative frenzy, often just need to be told, this is all happening exactly as it is. It needs to happen. This does not need to be done today. Do not worry. It will unfold. Just take your fucking time.
And invariably, the times when you beat yourself up about something not happening when you thought it was supposed to happen, when it does happen, you go, that's why.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think as I reach this book launch, it's especially appropriate for me, because I'm like, I should be doing all these things right now. It's like, it will unfold as it needs to unfold, Amie. Like, there's so many expectations, I think, that I'm just navigating, and I'm constantly coaching myself in my motherfucking notes app in between the shopping lists. Like, chill out. It's all okay. It's all happening as it must.
Do you have a good relationship with your unconscious? And I ask that because in relation to what you just said, I'll give you an example. My book that I brought out last year, The Creative Condition, I started writing in 2017, and I got 60% way through a manuscript. And literally in a single moment on a train, my confidence fell through the floor and didn't come back for 4 years. And that's never happened to me before. And now I look back, and it wasn't confidence. It was the book wasn't ready. I had to live 4 more years of life to be able to write the book I knew I was trying to write. So, and then washing up, Christmas 2021, it's literally flew out my unconscious, fully formed, and I didn't stop writing it for 2 years after that. And that was an incredible experience, the biggest example of the unconscious just delivering. But I couldn't have written what I went on to write without those 4 years of living. Simple as that.
That's fucking mythical. I love it. What a bizarre experience. I'm super intrigued by it. And I love the question. I haven't ever been asked that before, because I often am asked, what's your relationship with your inner critic? And I have a very good relationship now with my inner critic, because it was vile. And I had to take such good care of her. I had to realize that she was simply a younger version of me who was very, very afraid and saying some really mean stuff. And so I have a good internal monologue, but a relationship with my unconscious is really interesting. And I think I navigate my body holds on to a lot that I don't understand, I think. I've had panic attacks for a lot of my life with no conscious understanding of why my body was so afraid. And so I do wonder if I'm still on my journey of truly understanding like what I hold that I don't know about, the unconscious. I certainly know that my body holds on to a lot that I'm not fully consciously aware of. So yeah, I feel like there's still, I mean, of course there's still journey to go on there, but I do want to understand a lot more of what's going on for me. And I can feel that gap sometimes. I feel that frustration.
Yeah, because I get a sense talking to you that we might share similar energy in the sense that the passion drives us to really go for it sometimes, and I have to stay on myself to allow myself the idling time and the rest time for my unconscious to work. I guess that's where I was going with the
Yeah, that's really
question.
interesting.
And I still lapse. Don't get me wrong, I do. That's the downside of doing all the practices that I've told you about today. It's like, that all of them I'm passionate about. So of course I always want to be busying with something, even if it's just reading up on a certain
Oh my
book. You
God, yeah.
mentioned Your Brain on Art earlier. Oh my God, that book, unreal.
Unreal.
Uh,
So
but
exciting.
I have a pile of such books. So even when I do get that
Yeah, there's
downtime, I'm
always something
like,
to read.
ah.
No, I mean that you've read me like a book. I'm very much like that. And I have that brain that just wants to create and to make. And because we've made such beautiful, exciting, enchanting lives, I really want to live it. And that often means very high stimulation and not a lot of quiet time. And so I find rest hard and I find that peace hard. Even though I'm very introverted, I'm not like out there socializing or anything. I'm always reading or I'm always making or I'm always thinking. There's a lot going on up there and finding more and more time for just being with myself. Like I'm back in a meditation practice at the moment where I just, let myself be. That I think is very important for people like us.
Yeah, it really is, and in an absolute probably a move of complete pig-headed defiance, I subscribed to the Idler magazine just after I became a twin parent.
Oh my God, absolutely like height of delusion. I love it.
But you know what? It's I had a couple of low-level mental health wobbles in that early period just because I was so
Of
fatigued all the
course. I
time,
mean,
and the weight of the world was on me more because I'm really sensitive, and I think a lot of us artists are, if not
we
all.
are.
Um, And so I subscribed to the Idler, partly because I was going to be interviewing Tom, the editor, but also just because it's a really awesome magazine about fulfillment and slowing down a touch. But
I
his
like
book
that.
comes with the subscription, and it's called An Idler's Manual, and it's 50 ways to idle and just to take a step back.
That's so
One of
cool.
them is just staring at a wall. So during that period, I was meeting a friend on the corner of the park at the bottom of our road, and I literally just stood and stared at a wall for 4 minutes because he was late. There's a lot going on that wall when you take
I
notice.
bet there was.
But when I started to implement this a little more in my life, just whether it's sitting down when I'm out on the dog walk and just taking it in for a moment, I just noticed that my imagination and my ideas are a little stronger when I allow them in.
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, it's imperative that we have time to daydream and it's imperative that we are bored. And that's very hard for a lot of artists. But these places, when we do let the world actually creep in, when we let the silence creep in, that's where art is often made. And it's very important for us. And I have several signs around my house that says, boredom is necessary for the artist. Please don't run from moments of silence. And so I have practices where I really try and make sure that I come back to the silence, come back to the boredom, come back to just being present. And I really like the idea of staring at a wall. I mean, I don't want to do it, but I think I may try it.
You can, it's essentially at its root, it's obviously a meditational practice. You
Yeah,
can adapt that
beautiful.
however you like.
Yeah.
But I would go on from what you just said there to also say that one of the biggest enemies of that active downtime, of course, is tech and social media. And
Yes.
it's very conscious, it's very well funded to hook that attention. And there's a lot of hatred at the moment for the Zuckerbergs and the Musks of this world for reasons that we won't go into now. But I would, so to those people that feel angry with them, I would say one of the best ways you can get back at them and the best ways you
Revenge.
can help
Stare at a wall.
yourself. Yeah,
Revenge.
just yeah,
Revenge.
get offline, stare at a wall, go and speak to someone in your community. I think all of that is going to not only help you as an artist, as a human, but it's also going to stick two fingers up to that horrible,
Yeah.
attention grab.
Yeah. I love that. I think I mean, there's a whole conversation to have about artists' relationship to social media. But for me, the most important thing is that I never feel used and that I always feel like I am in power. because for a lot of us, we feel completely powerless to these spaces that are just absolutely grabbing our attention, grabbing our time, our art creating time, like our quiet time. It's being literally robbed of us. And so making sure that I feel like I've got in control and I have power and I have measures that I take to make sure that's the case, because these are really hard things to navigate against. But I love that. I love the idea of whenever I create art, I'm like, fuck big tech, fuck Amazon. Like, it's just always rebellion. Art to me is the most rebellious thing we do. And as someone who's like, for some reason, inherently wants to rebel against everything that's ever been told to me, it feels very relieving.
Yes, it is, isn't it? And it's just everything else falls away for a moment, if nothing else. But you also generate your own lines of inquiry and your own purpose, and it just revalidates that we are all individuals and that we all matter.
Yeah. Can I ask you some questions? Is that allowed?
Of course you can. Yeah.
I know
Yeah,
I'm on
go
your
for it.
podcast, but I've just been having a lot of conversations lately about this idea of I think a lot of people are calling it like the male malaise, and this idea that men are feeling a huge amount of purposelessness. And I'd be really interested in hearing whether, I mean, I know that I find huge meaning and huge purpose in art, and looking at men, and we're seeing less and less men, particularly in my industry, writing books. We're seeing less and less men in the art spaces. And I wonder if it's something about the vulnerability of it, but I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about that. I'm super curious about this idea of bringing art back into the lives of men to give them that sense of purpose that they're perhaps feeling like they're missing.
I think there's definitely something in that. And I think it stems from the transformation of the old world, the Industrial Revolution, the way that the old dynamic. So, as a majority rule, the guys would go out to work and the women would be at home. That was my mum's dynamic, my mother-in-law's dynamic, all of that. I'm glad to see that changing. One of the things that's lost in that, though, is a little bit of the purpose, because, where are the factories? Where are the checkouts? All those places in our community where there would be jobs, and I'm not saying those jobs were for guys by any stretch.
But it was their role. Like that was what was socially expected from them, to be provider. And with that shifting, I think we do see a little bit of purposelessness. Like, what do I do? Like, what's my role? And without like very clear dynamics. And obviously we wanted these things to change because it's bullshit. And men shouldn't have this on them, and women shouldn't have like the nurturer on them. Like, let's be whoever the fuck we want to be. But it does require us like finding who we want to be. And I feel like that's very challenging for a lot of us.
It is, and we're in the aftermath, aren't we, of that? Because I'm 41. I grew up. My dad worked in various factory jobs. Didn't love them. He liked them enough to stay in them for all those years and provide for the family. It gave him comfort. He knew the people there. What that then looked like is a lot of those. My dad was never a drinker, but a lot of those guys then they would do their venting in the pub. Pubs are in crisis. They've changed.
Yes, where's the communities going?
Yeah, and as much as the toxic drinking culture that I grew up in the early 2000s, I'm glad that's waned somewhat. What I miss was the pubs of my childhood. Now, I would have friends who their parents would just go to the pub on a Sunday. They weren't getting pissed up. They were somewhere, of course, but it was a massive community thing. People were playing
where are
people
they?
were paying
so
pool.
Sad.
There would be quizzes. It was much more of a social activity where people went pre-social media. Now that is a loss, not just for guys, of course, but I think that we are in an aftermath of a very male-dominated culture, and the fallout of that means that young men growing up don't have the same kind of bastions for right or wrong that were there in that previous generation. Art, of course, has a massive role to fill that void. Music, any art form. It's important that picks up some pieces. And it's not because it's as demonized as it ever was in our education systems and in our society. Maybe not demonized, but it's massively undervalued.
Ignored. Yeah, undervalued, just not seen as something. It's not seen as useful. And I think usefulness is almost what we're all looking for, especially a lot of men who feel purposelessness. And people aren't going, art's useful, because we've never been told that story. Yeah, well, super interesting.
You go on any youth program, and I've been on one or two. The moment that you teach a young person who's a bit disenfranchised or had a tough start in their life and got aggression, that they could use their experience to write a lyric, for example, that's transformative. That changes their life.
Transformative. Oh my God.
Imagine that was there from year 7 in school.
Oh my God, it makes me Very activated. My therapist the other day, we've changed the word stressed to activated. While that would normally have stressed me out, I'm activated.
That's really funny. Oh, that's awesome. But yeah, so I don't know what the solution is there, but it doesn't have to be massive. It's community, it's art, it's getting young guys together around something that enables them to voice their problems
Their
and
thoughts,
express
yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
It's self-expression, always.
I know, and I feel like, the traditional way that we've raised men and people born as men is like we've don't express yourself. And it's like art is this beautiful way to allow people, but men in particular, to let their emotions be heard. James, my partner, he really struggles with voicing his needs or voicing hard emotions, perhaps is a better way to say it, because he was never allowed to do that ever.
Mm-hmm.
His poetry is where he feels, and it's the only way he can feel that feeling. He can't feel it unless he puts it into poetry. I'm like, let's have more men writing poems. Like, come on, this is going to help the world in crazy ways. Like, people often think that we need to, more politicians, more scientists, because that's going to help the world. We need more men writing poems. That's what we actually need.
Absolutely. How about a comedy workshop?
Oh my God.
Comedy's
this is going to change
vehicle.
the world.
Yeah, I interviewed a guy called Ian Stone, who's a comedian in London, and he's really great. And it was I led a campaign on behalf of Campaign Against Living Miserably, the charity, and
Excellent,
it was exactly
charity.
about this. Yeah, it was exactly about this. It was about the male thing, and it was about the emotional benefits of artistic expression. Got to talk to people like Danny Dyer, these kind of male,
amazing.
but in a really raw, open, honest interview about the real stuff. And they all echoed the same thing, that if they weren't doing their comedy, their acting, they don't know what they'd be up to, but it probably wouldn't be good.
Yeah. So important. What we do is so important. And I think it's very easy to undervalue what we are giving to the world because we haven't been told that what we do is important. But please, just everyone needs to really sink into it. Like, it is so important.
It really is. Before we wrap this up, can we talk about Inspired Collective a little bit?
Oh, I'd love to.
Tell us about that. I was browsing it before I jumped on this interview, and it looks wonderful.
Thank you. I, as I said, I'm extremely introverted, but I tried to do this, be an artist, be a writer thing by myself, and it just fucking sucked. Like, even I needed people, and I really can't tell you how introverted I am. Like, I am so introverted. People often are surprised by that because I can talk, but I have very, very low social energy. But I know that all artists, no matter how introverted we are, we need community, because what we're doing is so brave and so countercultural and so rebellious that we need family around us doing similar things. And so I was like, I need to make community. And my community online is very disparate. We're all over the world. And I was trying to meet ups in big cities, but we're too all over the place, and people were absolutely desperate to find a sense of family, creative family. So I've made an online creative family. We call it Creative Church. It's every Sunday, it's Creative Church, and we come together and we alternate between we just create together and we just sit and make stuff for an hour together, or we have a talk about something that's coming up in the community. Last week it was about what we ask from our art. Like, what are we expecting our art to do for us, and what are we doing for our art? Because these are the conversations that you try and have with, like, I mean, I don't know why, but I just grew up with the most regular friends who do the most regular stuff. Like, I try and have conversations about this with all my lawyer friends. They don't have a fucking clue what I'm talking about. We need community as we do these brave things. And so I've built this incredible, I haven't built it. Honestly, I just started it, and it has been built by artists. And it is unbelievable to watch us be together and support each other and to see each other. I think such a big pain point for so many artists is they feel very unseen. And I would go on to say that it's almost traumatic to feel unseen as an artist, because so much of our intention and our drive is to be witnessed. And so to have a family like this where we see each other each week, it's transformative. Like, I truly feel so held by that community. And so, yeah, we open twice a year. I feel so protective over it. Every time we open it, I get like very stressed about, very activated about how and who is coming in. But I feel blessed that I've always attracted the most incredible, powerful creatives. And we just be together. We're all at different stages of the journey. Like, some people are so experienced and are doing such cool, not cool, Like, yeah, they're doing very cool shit, and some of us have just picked up a pen. But the funny thing is we're all going through the same stuff. And I love that. So we hold each other wherever we are at in the journey.
Incredible. I love it. And that community is just, it's one of my biggest joys in life. And the forms of it are different. I mentioned earlier, I'm a big wrestling fan. So my brother and I are just complete nerds for it. And we've been to WrestleMania 3 times in the States. And it's just that tribe.
Oh, I
and
love
being
that.
among them people who love that one thing. Oh, God, I
So
love it.
beautiful. I love it when I love seeing humans who love something come together and just love it as a collective. So beautiful. It's absolutely stunning. Yeah, something we need, and we need more than ever.
And it's that individual ownership within as well, isn't it? You've got your very unique version of it, which you just take to that tribe, and to see that validated and to see other people's and know you're not alone. It's fundamental.
It's so beautiful. Can I just quickly go on a small rant, or do we need to wrap this shit up?
No, please do. There's no time limit at my end.
I was just going to say that I find that artists unusually, actually, and I'm very like this, we often want to feel very different from everybody else. And so I know that a lot of artists can be reticent to be in communities because it's like, no, we've got that and I love it. I'm special vibe. Like that is such a problem for me. Like, I believe I'm so special and not like anybody else. And it's such a problem. But we do have that. And in many ways it's true. Like, you are so unique as an artist and you are so special. So I think a lot of the times it can take a little bit of coaxing to get artists to be with one another. We've also been brought up in a scarcity culture around who can make it in the arts. So it can feel like very competitive when you put artists in spaces. But the Inspire Collective doesn't have a fucking competitive bone in its body. It's been built on a bedrock of when you rise, I rise. And I think that's the type of community artists need to build. And it's also built on a community of, yes, there is much that we have that is similar, but also everyone here is extremely special and very unique, and nobody is like you. And I think that's a hard balance to make, but it has to be done for artists because we are incredibly special.
Yeah, you do. And the closer you get to that uniqueness, the more you trust that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And let the guard down to take that to the others and see what they're doing and how unique they are and champion that. It's all wins for everyone.
It's win, 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 100%.
Yeah, I had it at art college. I had it in the communities and studios I've shared along the way. We all just bounce off one another. And by being in that same space with that same energy, it's awesome.
Amazing. So powerful.
Yeah, I think I've covered it all, but I just want to say thank you for writing that book, because it's really, really great. And not only has it immediately helped me write, within the first chapter, it helped me, which is just brilliant. And have you ever heard the term invisible hands?
No. Oh yes, Julia Cameron.
I don't know who initially coined it. I came across it through Joseph Campbell, who was an American educator and writer. A friend because I was trying to explain it to this friend who's a writer who shared a studio in London with me. And I came in one day saying, do you ever just get that sense that when you've got forward motion and you've got that confidence and you're flowing, things seem to happen, those serendipitous moments?
They're synchronicity, baby.
Yeah, and he just went, yes, invisible hands. It's invisible hands. I look up Joseph Campbell, so I looked it up, and he talked about that sense of when you're on the right track, it's as if you're on a track that was always there and you found it kind of thing. Anyway, your book falls into that, along with your brain on art and all these things.
Yeah, beautiful.
And this serendipity just keeps on giving, and I think it's a great way to blast the doubt, or at least to temper the self-doubt when you have those moments.
So, it's so beautiful. I journaled about this morning. I said I call in synchronicity those little moments of just being like, this is it. And I love that you mentioned it. Yeah, Julia Cameron writes a lot about invisible hands in The Artist's Way, and I really attached to it. I think especially when I was in very dark times when nothing seemed to be working, I was just like, I just looked out for those tiny moments of synchronicity, those tiny moments of invisible hands. And like, when one happened, I was like, oh my God, I like clung to it. That's the thing. And when you move, sure enough, the next thing happens, and it's sequential, and it's very real. You know, you can't ever, I mean, none of us are, in the way that science and logic seems to rule, they will never prove that, but once you feel it, it's undoubtable. Yeah. So beautiful. Amazing. Well, this has been absolutely wonderful, Amie. Thank you, Ben. I'm so grateful. This is very synchronous. I'm very glad to have connected with you. Likewise. And the book is coming out in March. March 13th for the Brits, March 11th for the Yanks. Awesome. And I hope that feels really exciting for you. Thank you. I'm so excited. I cannot wait for people to have this book baby in their hands and for more art to be made. So important.
Enormous thank you to Amie McNee for taking the time to talk ahead of her book release. We need your art. Stop messing around and make something. And she's absolutely right. Quit procrastinating. Pack it in with the perfectionism. Get making. Make a mess. Get human. I was saying to a client last week, we were talking about AI. And this client has just finished her MA, and she was talking about her desire to make art, to use textures, to use her hands, to use collage and found textures and organic stuff. And I said, you absolutely need to go that way, because here we are, we're in a position. There's a lot of fear around AI, but there's one thing that I can tell you. What can be replicated will be replicated. So keep that in mind. Exclusively digital, grid-based, it's up for grabs. That's where we are. Whether that's good or bad is subjective, and it depends on your position. I personally don't think it's great as a lover of craft and graphic design, but this is why we need to return the craft and the human story to work, because there's a ubiquity of flat, vector-based digital work, and it's very easily replicated the more powerful this stuff gets. And that's a real shame, because if you've built a personal style within that realm and that's what it is and that's what you love, maybe that's unfortunate. I think it is. However, great design and art was always about your story, your lived experience. And what was really big in that conversation was when Amie talked about the need to live your life, to have experiences, to put them in the pot and to make art. If you're just sitting at a screen and you're on Pinterest, and I've heard so many good creative directors and lecturers caution against this long before AI was on the horizon, you're feeding automation. That's what's going on. Because the experiences just become samey and watered down. And if you're not living your life and using your beautiful, unique experience and personality, which are the biggest assets you had, then it's going to be game over pretty soon. That doesn't mean you have to use exclusively organic work or go back to traditional media. But to vary it up, to find out, to start bringing in interesting nuances and personal detail is absolutely vital in this age of automation. And I really think it's where the good stuff is going to last and is going to be needed. Anyway, that's a whole nother conversation, but there we have it. Amie's book is out on the 13th of March. I couldn't recommend it any higher. It's on the Creative Condition reading list. I do not put anything on there lightly. That has my stamp of approval. I am a massive proponent of reading far and wide to pollinate your creativity. Living those experiences, but also relaxing by sitting down with great books and taking on board fiction, non-fiction, poetry, literary classics. Like, find your thing, find your thread, what resonates with you, and move towards it. Find out why it resonates and drill down. Cheers for listening, guys. Big thank you to Illustration X, the founding sponsor of the show. They've been here over a decade, right behind me, helped me get this show off the ground. I couldn't thank them anymore. Please do consider supporting the Ukrainian Institute, ui.org.ua, where you can share the work of their artists who are caught up in a horrible war and need their creativity and need the work as artists. So help them out, guys. You can commission them even better. The coaching offer is still on. The pit stop session is available at £400. And for that money, you will be completely realigned, re-energized. We will identify frustrations, blind spots, where you might have come detached from your pure path. We'll help get you back on it. We'll go into childhood. We'll go into your environment. We'll talk about your sense of humour, introversion, extroversion, sensitivity. We're going to community and tribes and nomadicity, your sense of adventure. There's so much we cover to make sure that the human at the core of the creating is doing well and is where you need to be. I love the process. I've done 4 this year. They've all gone so well. We're talking to agencies about coaching programs too. It's a whole new exciting arm of the Creative Condition, and I'd love to work with you, so get in touch. If not, if it's simply out of your budget, there's going to be a video course coming either late this year, early 2026. There are free resources, including over 300 episodes of this very podcast, right there available for you to listen. So many great insights from so many different makers over the period I've been doing this, which is now 10 years. There's the reading list too. I'm going to be bringing in a toilet guide, reclaiming the toilet, not just sitting on your phone, but reading, considering, musing, idling, daydreaming. It's what we need to be doing. We need to get making to defeat the machine, because it's coming for us if we don't. There we are. I'm very ranty and rambly today. I've been fired up by Amie because it's just such a great conversation to revisit. I would love your feedback and thoughts. Please do read them. Leave them in the form of a review for the show. Ratings are also great on your preferred platform. But most importantly, please tell a friend. If you liked this show, if you tell someone, it helps spread the word. You can check out Amie over at Amie McNee. That's AIMEE, McNee, NEE.com. Inspired to Write on Instagram. And her book's going to be out there in all the good bookshops. We need your art. Stop messing around and make something. That's enough from me. Cheers, guys. Thank you for listening. You are treasured. If you're first time to the show, I hope you enjoyed this as a banging introductory episode. But it is indicative of the range of the entire archive. It's all there on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and everything else. Cheers, guys. Have an awesome week. Take care. I'll speak to you soon.